whales fit in a very deep legend in humankind in many different ways. And so, firstly, I think they're part of our soul. They're part of the living system. But nowadays, they also are indicators of the way we steward the oceans. And so, in a sense, the protection of the whales represents the protection of the precious ocean. Cape Cod, I think, has had a long and very special relationship with whales. Starting in prehistory, the Native Americans we know took whales that washed up on the beaches, and after that there was a very active whaling industry that was important to the economics of the Cape.
So whaling on the Cape, really, because of the configuration of the Cape and the accessibility to Massachusetts Bay, whaling is really taking place in most of the towns on Cape Cod that we recognize today, places like Bourne and Falmouth and Mashpee. Prior to the Revolutionary War period, when you have the drift whaling and the shore whaling, whales become a bounty for these towns that we've mentioned. After the war, the disruption of the Revolutionary War really puts an end to much of the whaling on Cape Cod, with the exception of Provincetown. And the economic impact in Provincetown cannot be underestimated. It really makes Provincetown one of the wealthiest towns per capita in Massachusetts by the Civil War era. Again, it was a diabolical business, but one that you can understand because of the need to make a living. And fortunately now we've grown, we've been educated to understand how important these animals are, thanks to places like the Center for Coastal Studies that's recognized really the world over now for their efforts to educate and research and save whales.
We have really a simple mission that's tied to the mission of the institution. We are looking to aid conservation with knowledge, and then to spread that knowledge through our education department. In terms of the rescuing of whales, my father, for instance, was hunting whales in the 20s here off of Cape Cod, and he used techniques that were similar to the techniques that we now use for the protection of whales, for the rescue.
There are a number of threats to the survival of whales, and in this area we're dealing primarily with humpbacks and right whales. The two main threats to them are ship strikes and entanglement in fishing gear. There's two key parts to disentanglement. The first one is that you need to access the whale, and that means slowing it down. Back in the historic whaling days, they would attach kegs to the harpoon line, and that would slow down the whale. And so at the center here, they figured out that if you want to get close to a free-swimming whale, you attach kegs. The second part is, once you have slowed down the whale, is to cut the lines. You want to cut the lines that are entangling the whale, but not the line that is attached to your buoys. You want to leave that one to last. And so in order to access the entanglement, we've put knives onto long poles, up to 30 feet long, and we can reach to the spot that's entangling the whale, usually around its rostrum or nose, or around its pectoral fin, or if we're really lucky, it's around its tail, which is the easiest part to access.
The rarest of all of the whales, and the most critically endangered, is the North Atlantic right whale. It is the one that remarkably, of all of the Atlantic Ocean, makes Cape Cod its home. Its future is probably going to be written largely here in Cape Cod waters. Dealing with an extraordinarily rare animal, as I do with right whales, gives me a chance to assure the future of a species that is, and has been for years, on the brink of extinction. Our knowledge of what they need is now surpassing the willingness of society to protect them. And so that's where our education efforts come in many different ways. We've got to tell society what it needs to do to protect them and convince them it's important. I think, humankind has even now in this modern world, a very intense relationship with the wild ecosystem. And what we get is not something that's easily measured, but it is probably a continuing relationship with the wild world that only a few thousand years ago we had to live with. So I believe it's almost a religious experience, seeing some of these rare, remarkable animals.